Hey, this is Joe from SoFly, and in this video, we are going to import WordPress users from a CSV using WP All Import. So to get started, we'll go down here to All Import and select New Import. And then we have three options. We can upload a file, we can download a file from either a URL or from an FTP server, or we can use an existing file if we've already run an import and just want to use the same file again. In this case, I'll select Upload a File. And here is my CSV. So let's open it up and take a look. And you can see it's kind of exactly what you'd expect, right? It's a bunch of columns, pretty easy to read, right? We have first name, last name, job title, the company where the person works, their email address, the date they registered with our service, URL to their LinkedIn profile, and then the address information for the place where they work, and then some information about their education, right? Where they went to school, when they graduated, and what the degree was in. So WP All Import doesn't really care how the data is set up. We can simply drag and drop to import that data into WordPress. And we'll see that in just a second. So I'm going to select this file. We have two options. We have new items or existing items. So existing items, this is if we wanted to import into users that were already in my site, right? So if I already had a bunch of users and then I had a CSV, which kind of represented at least some portion of them, and I wanted to update those users, and then I could still, add new users with that import. But with this, it's really about editing or importing into existing users, right? In this case, I'm just importing new users. Now, the reason this is an important decision to make now is later on when I decide to, if I rerun this import again later, if I select a new items import, then I can't edit, right? That import's not going to be able to affect users that were not imported by this import. So by selecting new items, I'm basically telling WP All Import, the users that I'm creating here, there's no existing users on the site. And if I later on try and match to existing users, it's not going to be possible, right? So if I'm trying to match to existing users, I'll select this one. In this case, I'm just importing users. And then no matter what I do later, I'm only going to be importing into this set of users. Okay, so we've selected new users, and from this pull down, we'll select users. So we're going to create new users for each record in my data file. And we'll continue to step 2. All right, so we have 8,345 users that'll be imported. And you can see here, it's a little bit like a pivot table in Excel. So this is the columns from my file, and then this is the data for just one record. So each record is here, right? And this is basically to let us see that WP All Import has correctly read the file that I've uploaded. And if I see some sort of issue here with a CSV, it's probably because it got the delimiter wrong, right? It's a CSV with a tab delimiter or a pipe delimiter or something like that, right? So in this case, it's a CSV delimiter. The delimiter is the character that goes between each column, right? It's comma separated values, CSV. So it's detected it correctly. Everything looks good. I don't need to do anything here. And then down here, we have some filtering options. If we wanted to, for example, only import users that are from the state of Colorado, I can go down here and I can say state equals Colorado. Just like that. And we can add a rule. And there we go, state equals California, state equals Colorado, apply filters to XPath. And there we go. Now we have 200 rows that'll be imported. And these people are all from Colorado. And I can add more rules, right? So I could say, I want everybody from Colorado who has a degree that contains, let's say, PhD, right? Let's see if anybody from Colorado has a PhD. So Colorado and PhD. There we go. So we have 26 folks from Colorado who have a PhD, right? And this is a PhD in genetics. This is a PhD in nanotech. So it's just detecting that the degree field has PhD in it, right? Contains versus equals, right? So we have all sorts of rules we can add, etc. So for me, let's import everybody from Colorado. So we'll update that. There we go. And we're good. We got our 200 back. Now, you'll notice here, this is actually just an XPath statement. Now, you don't need to know what XPath is to use WP All Import. You can kind of not pay attention to this if it's not relevant for you. But under the hood, what WP All Import is doing is it's taking this CSV, every file that you give it, it takes it, converts it to XML, and then you can target each node in here. In this case, each node is going to be a record, a user, and you can target it with XPath rules. And if you want to, you can just write your own XPath statement. And you can Google that. We have documentation on our website, wplimport.com. So yeah, if you need to, you can write your own XPath here. All right, so filtering options are good. We're going to continue to step 3. And then over here on the left, this is where we set up our import. And over here on the right, this is the data in my file. And we simply drag and drop. There's my first name. Here's my last name. Now the login, we added a string here that contains the user's username for logging in. So we'll set that to their first name and their last name. And then for their email, we'll just drag in their email address. And this login username, it can be anything, right? Maybe you have a column here for the username, maybe you don't. You can just build it by dragging in 2 fields. And then down here, we have our password. So for the password, we're going to leave this blank because I don't have any password fields in here. And what will happen is when WPL import runs this import, it's just going to generate a password for them. And then in the welcome email, they're going to receive a reset URL so they can reset their password to something that they know. Now, maybe you don't need to have these users log in, so the password doesn't matter. Or maybe you need to have them log in with the password that you already had on another WordPress site. In that case, you would use WPL export to migrate the users over, and then you would import from the file the hashed password over here. And then what that's going to do is it's going to let them use their password from their old site on the new site, but you're not going to be able to see the password in between, right? So it's still secure. Another option here would be if you don't want to use the kind of standard welcome email from WordPress, you can use a plugin to edit the welcome email to make it be whatever you need it to be. And then you can give them the reset URL that way. Or you come up with whatever other system you need to let the users access the site, right? So, you could do something kind of stupid, like you could just write in password here. And then that way, when somebody goes to log into the site, you can just tell them in your welcome email, you know what, your password is literally password, go change it. Maybe not the most elegant solution, but it works. So I'll leave this to you to kind of figure out what your needs are for the password, but those are your general options, right? You can set a default password here. You can let WordPress handle it and send them a welcome email. You can not worry about it at all and not let the users log in, or you can migrate them with WPL export and use the hashed passwords in here. Okay, so moving right along, that's our user account info done. We have other user info here. So we have our role. The user role by default is just going to be subscriber. If I had the user role here and everybody had, for example, a different role, this person's a subscriber, this person's an editor, and there's some field in here that lets me determine which is which. Well, in that case, you would just drag the field over. Or if I wanted these all to be editors, I could just type in editor, right? So whatever you need to do, that's how you handle it with that field. And then the nickname. Now, by default, the user's nickname is going to be their username. Well, let's go ahead. Let's just give them their first name. Just like that. And now we have the display name. So by default, the display name is just going to be the person's username, just like before. But let's make it a little bit nicer. Let's go over here. Let's drag in the first name and the last name with a space in between them. And that looks like a nice display name for me. And then down here, we have the description. So here we can put their biographical information that'll show up on their user account. And I have some data here, so I could build something kind of interesting, right? So I could say that they are put their job title at a company. So this person is a sales representative at Vunt. And this user, this would say senior developer at Uspan. So in these fields, in fact, in all of these fields, you can just type in any combination of the tag from over here, this import template tag, and static text, right? And we can do a little bit more. So let's say I want to put their degree information from Kansas City Art Institute, right? So BA in anthropology from Kansas City Art Institute. So that's how you can kind of build out some of these field information, some of this field information. All right, moving along, we have a registered date. So this is the date the user was registered. Format is going to be year, month, date. I have that over here. We'll drag that in. And the nice name. So the nice name is used in the URL. So that's a URL friendly string. And this defaults to the user's username. We'll just leave that blank to go with the default. And then down here we have their URL. So we can drag in their LinkedIn profile URL, just like that, right? Looks good. Okay, so that is pretty much our import setup. The last thing we'd have down here is our custom fields, right? So users can have custom meta associated with them, and WPL import makes it really easy to set up. So if you want WPL import to automatically see the detected fields, first, you need to create a user, and then you have to add data into those fields and save it, right? Because what WPL import is going to do is it's going to go and check the meta table for all the unique fields there, so it can populate this list. But if you don't have any users with those fields, it can't see them. So first step, before you run your import, just create a user like this, just a simple dummy user test. I just used test@example.com and then saved it with this information here. Field, just like that, right? But in my case, I have a few that I've set up. So let's see detected fields. And this is all of the fields associated with all of my users, right? So I have stuff like, rich text editing, things like that I don't want. So let's clean these up. We'll get rid of these. We're not going to import any of this. We just want these. Now I created these fields with ACF. And the way ACF works is it adds kind of like this dummy field with an underscore in front of it. So I don't need those. So I'm only going to keep the ones with my test value in them. So we'll delete that. We'll delete that. We'll delete that. We'll just go down the list. Yada, yada. Okay, done. So now I have company, job title, company address, university, degree, and the date that they graduated. So now let's replace all these. So first we'll go over here to company, and I'll drag in my company information. And that is up here. Next, job title. There we go. Company address. Now you'll notice I don't have one address field. I just have address. I have it all kind of split up into different fields. So we'll just build our own field. So we'll drag in our address and we'll add a comma and a space. So 2158 Algoma Park in Denver, Colorado, and United States, and our zip code. There we go. Looks good to me. University that they went to, going to be over here, Kansas City Art Institute. Their degree, BA in anthropology. And they graduated January of 2002. All right, so that's our custom field set up. Next, we have the function editor, last thing to go over. Basically, the way this works in WPL import, you can pass any data in any of these fields through PHP function. And the way that works is let's look at this in a little bit more detail, right? So we have a registered date over here. You see these curly brackets. So everything inside this curly bracket is actually an XPath statement. So we can write whatever we want here. We can write any custom XPath function in here, and WPL import is going to pull that from the file, right? Now, what we can also do is we can wrap this in regular brackets, and everything inside here is going to be processed as PHP. So then I can add a function. So I could say, for example, str replace, right? And then I would build out my function here. So we open it up with parentheses, like that, right? So everything in here is going to be PHP. And then here's my function. And then everything in these parentheses, like that, is going to be the value passed into that function, right? And then everything inside the curly brackets is for WPL import to know which data to import. Now, obviously for str replace, there's a few more things I'd have to add in here to make this function work properly. So what I could do is I could write a custom function instead. And I would just write it like this. So now I've used my function. I'm passing this data into my function. The problem is I haven't written it yet. So that's what this area is for here. So now here we can declare custom functions. So it would just be like this. And then we would pass in a date, do something, and there we go. So now what's going to happen over here is this data, registered date, is going to be passed into my function. like that. And then we're going to do something with it. And whatever gets returned by that function will be imported here inside of those brackets, right? Pretty simple, very powerful feature. If you know PHP, you can do pretty much anything with this. And if you don't know PHP, you can check out our documentation. In our documentation at wplimport.com, we have a code snippets page to get you started. Lots and lots of code snippets in there to give you some ideas. You can also use ChatGPT. There's tons of online guides. PHP is pretty friendly, pretty easy to use. And this is a great way to kind of get started with it if you don't really feel comfortable writing code on your own. This is kind of like an easy mode kind of. So you can just write a really simple little function and then see how PHP works. Okay, so we don't need anything for this import. I've returned my field to its natural state. Everything looks good. Let's go ahead and continue to step 4. Here we have to set up our unique identifier. So we can auto-detect it. And it's auto-detected first and last name over here, which means that the first name and last name is unique. So if anybody in this file has the same first name and last name, we're going to be in trouble, right? So it doesn't sound very unique to me. So now WPL import is usually going to get this right. So by clicking auto detect and it giving me first name, last name, that tells me that in this file, everybody has a unique first, last name. However, that might not be true if I run this import again. So I want to pick something that's actually truly unique. In that case, it's going to be the email address, right? If 2 of these records have the same email address, they're the same person. So our unique identifier in this case is going to be email. And like I said, usually you can get away with just pressing the auto detect button and you won't get into trouble. Okay, so we've set up our unique identifier. Next up, we have some options. And these options here are related to telling WPL import what to do if we run this import again with different data, right? So if that happens, one of 3 things is going to happen for each record. Either the record's new, in which case we need to tell WPL import, okay, do you want to create a new user if there's new records or not? The next thing that could happen is that record is not new, right? If we just run this file again, all of these people are going to be imported again. So what do we want to do? We want to import users and update them with new data if it changed. For example, let's say the address changed over here and then we run this import again. Do we want to update the address or not, right? Or maybe we're running the import and the address field is just not there. So of course we don't want to update the address because it's going to remove it. So these options let WP import know how you want it to handle existing users when we run the import again. Now this, don't have to worry about, if you run a different import, because you're going to set up those settings different, right? It's only if we run this import again, right? And the last thing is, what happens if there's users that aren't present in the file? Well, do you want to delete them, ignore it, or what, right? So if I deleted this from my CSV later and ran this import again, do I want this person to be deleted from my site, right? So we have some options over here to determine exactly what to do, right? Do we delete the users? Do we delete all the users on the site that aren't in the file, etc.? So these options are for running this import again with different data or the same data, right? Just tells WP import what to do. Now, in this case, it doesn't really matter because I'm only going to run this import once. But if you are interested in recurring imports, check out our website. We have a lot of documentation on this, on recurring imports, on scheduling and things like that. And we have some videos on our YouTube channel to go over it. So moving along, we have email notifications for imported users. Now, you'll remember when we were setting up our import earlier, we had the password. We left it blank, right? So when I run this import, none of these folks are going to be able to log into their site. They're going to have an account. How do they access it? They're going to have to reset their password, right? So we should tell them how to do that. So what I could do is I could uncheck this. And if I do that, every single one of these people, as we get imported, all 200 of them, are going to get an email. And in this case, it's just going to be the standard welcome email from WordPress. I can install a plugin that lets me edit the welcome email if I wanted to make it a little bit more custom, or I can block the email notifications during import, and then I can use this CSV in something like MailChimp or something like that to send them a more customized email after I know everything went okay on the import, things like that. So how you handle onboarding, or if you handle it at all, maybe I don't want these users to be able to log in. I just want the data in WordPress for my own purposes, right? So the purpose of this import and how you want to onboard people, if you want to onboard them, that's something you figure out before you run it and then you make sure you have a nice plan, right? That aligns with what you're trying to do for the import. In this case, we're going to block email notifications. If there happens to be a Laura Lee Girardi at uspan.com, I don't want to email her from my site during this demo video. So we'll just leave that blocked. And then when I run this import, no emails are going to be sent. Down here, we have our scheduling options. If I wanted to run this import on a schedule, for example, if I had this CSV hosted at some external URL and that data was changing and I want to keep my site up to date, I can set up a schedule. We have two options for scheduling. We have manual scheduling, where you run your import with cron jobs. And then we have automatic scheduling, which is kind of a point and click service where you can just click and say, okay, I want to run my import every Monday at midnight, etc. Right? And then that's when these options would come into play, right? How do we handle changed data when those scheduled imports run? Okay, and then finally we have some advanced settings over here. They're pretty self-explanatory. These ones are mostly for debugging if you're having problems with your import not finishing before it gets terminated by the server. So if you have issues with that, you can check our troubleshooting documentation and play with some of these. Importing only specified records. Let's say I just wanted to import the first 10 as a test. I can do that like this. So we have a little syntax over here. So you can decide, which records to import from this file, kind of like a really simple set of filters. And this is another debugging setting. If you're curious about it, you can just go and read it. Not very important for this import. And then our friendly name. This is the label that will be applied to the import on the Manage Imports page after I run it. So I'll just call this user import so I know what I'm looking at. Okay, so that is all of our import settings. Let's go ahead and continue. And this is our import summary. Looks good. We'll confirm and run the import. So this is just going to take a few seconds to run. Let's watch it go. Almost done. Ooh, 180. Oh, and there we go. Finished. Nice and quick. 200 users imported. Job done. Let's go ahead and let's check our user table over here. So here's all my users I just imported. Everything looks good. Let's open one of these up and take a look. All right. User role is subscriber. We got the first name, last name. Their nickname is here. Their display name is there. Got the email address, LinkedIn profile URL, and then biographical information came in. General manager of BuzzDog, PhD in philosophy from the American Academy of Nutrition. Came in all right. And then here is all of our custom fields that we set up. Looks pretty good. All right, so that is all it takes to import WordPress users with a CSV using WP All Import. Check out our YouTube channel. Check out our documentation at wplimport.com. We have a lot more videos on importing and exporting data. We also have WPL Export over here for exports and WPL Import for imports. And if you want to migrate or bulk edit data, WPL Import and WPL Export work together very well for that. And again, we have videos and documentation on how to do that if it is something interesting for you. All right, so thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.